Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Mavs Moneyball After Dark. This is Kirk Henderson, and I'm joined once again by fellow editor Ben Zadell. Ben, how are you tonight?
Doing good. How about you, Kirk?
You know, I'm okay. I'm making it through the weekend. We had a little Mavs Moneyball gathering on Friday night, and I was sick going into it, but then got sicker because I couldn't help myself we had fun. We were outside watching the preseason game on a big blow-up screen. It was nice. Got to meet some people that we've only talked through. It was a good time, and I'm really jazzed for basketball.
Great food, by the way. Great.
Oh yeah. Intrinsic Barbecue was where we got food from. It was outstanding. Really been good on the leftovers too. Really recommend the cream corn. How's that for random to start a podcast? All right. So we've done 2-player preview podcast shows so far, kind of the guys that we wrote about, and our staff did a wonderful job this offseason and turned in all 16-player previews for the guys that we were, knew that were going to be on the roster. The only guy we're not going to end up talking about, I think, is Tyler Dorsey, who I am not sure makes it through the week as a Maverick. Ben wrote about him, but that kind of is what it is. Then what we're going to do is kind of go through and finish up with the 5 players that we haven't hit on yet. So let's just kind of jump right into it. So the first guy, his article is one of the lead articles on MavsMoneyball.com today, is Dwight Powell, who he's the longest serving Maverick serving. He's been with the team since the trade that netted the Mavericks Rajon Rondo way back when. And, he's just been sort of a stalwart in the lineup. He's played a ton of minutes. He's really high on the all-time Mavs games played list. And this year, from what we're sort of seeing, it looks like this might be the first year in a few years where he has a bit of a role reduction. And to be quite honest with you, Ben, I have no idea what to expect from Dwight Powell, other than the fact that I think he will probably play more than most people think. What do you think?
I think if you look at the preseason game on Friday, that seemed like a dress rehearsal for a regular season game. That seemed maybe their rotation. And yeah, it seems like Dwight Powell's not going to be a huge part of it. That being said, I've said that before. I've thought maybe his role will get reduced, 3 or 4 times over the years. And instead, sometimes it actually goes up. So yeah, it's like you're saying, I don't know how to predict what his role is going to be on this team, simply because he and Luka do have some pretty good chemistry on the offensive end, but he's just such a turnstile on the defensive end. Despite him, he does everything right. Despite he's in the places he's supposed to be, he just doesn't.
He's really good on the perimeter. It's just once you the closer you get to the rim, the more obvious it's Dwight Powell's there, I'm going to score.
Yeah, so he just doesn't have the size to really bother guys on the inside. And so
Yeah.
with Jason Kidd's, defensive mentality, I just don't see now that he's got some guys. I think he kind of played Dwight Powell more than he wanted to last season out of necessity. Their big man depth is a lot better this year. And so I think you're just going to see that finally, that reduced role that a lot of people have wanted. Again, who knows what the season brings, but I just can't see a big space for him in the rotation this year.
Which, okay, let's go look at last year. Like throughout his career, he's averaged just under 20 minutes a game. So I think some of this is like expectations where we feel like he plays more than he does. And I think that's largely because he's an Iron Man. I mean, he played 82 games last year and started a ton of them. So we're just really used to seeing a lot of Dwight Powell. And it's in 2018-19 he played 77 games. Like the last couple of years he's played a little bit less as he's had some injury issues and things like that. But it's if he goes down, like last year he played 22 minutes, I expect him to play 10 to 15 minutes, so and probably fewer games overall where they don't need him night in and night out. But when we say role reduction, it's kind of hard to really talk about what that means, because I think some people think he's just going to go away, whereas I think he sort of fades to a back part of the bench and gets to play a little bit, with particular lineups, and they're going to really experiment to see how he works and how he doesn't. Because the one thing that you have to say about Dwight Powell is that he does what he is coached to do. It is sort of a physical limitations, a size limitation thing that you talked about. For example, he has real high hips.
Yeah.
So I just think he has a real high center of gravity, so he just gets kind of bodied easily. But he's on an expiring deal. I think a lot of people believe he's going to get shipped out in some sort of trade, but I mean, we've thought that for years, and there's I sort of assumed Dwight Powell is like going to end up with his jersey in the rafters. Like he's just been a part of the team forever.
Well, I said he's going to be the Mavs Udonis Haslam. Like that seems to be the way it's going. Is he's just going to still be on the team, on that 15th roster spot or something, just collecting a paycheck to be a technical coach.
I love it. Well, there's not really much more to say for Powell at the moment. We'll see. I mean, maybe he gets an expanded role if things go sideways. It's nice to have him as depth insurance. I will say that, because we know what we're going to get when it comes to Dwight Powell. Sometimes a lot of cardio, but he sets hard screens and he plays hard, and there's value to that. Yeah. Coming up next is probably the guy. He's probably like my 1B X factor for these Dallas Mavericks, and that's Spencer Dinwiddie. Spencer Dinwiddie joined the Mavericks last season as part of the Kristaps Porzingis trade, and he had really one of the great. Let's see how many games he played. It was a 23 game stretch with the Dallas Mavericks where he played some of the best basketball of his entire career. He shot 40% from three. He shot 50% from the floor. He was really magnificent in helping the Mavericks go all the way up and secure the seed that they did for the playoffs. And with Jalen Brunson gone, I think there's a lot of expectation for Dinwiddie, and I don't know how to contextualize that expectation, because the player I have seen going back to his, he's 28 years old or 29 years old, and going back to his rookie year in Detroit, so he didn't play too much his first two seasons. He really started to break out with the Nets in 16-17. He's an inconsistent player. I don't know how to say that without being disrespectful, because I don't mean to be. It's just I at the moment I feel like the expectations for Spencer Dinwiddie are sort of off the charts high. Where are you with him at the moment?
Yeah, I think he'll be fine in the sense of the regular season. It's a question of, was that regular season splits that once he came to Dallas, is that going to be his season or something approximating that? Or is it going to be more like the playoffs? Is that what we're going to see from Spencer Dinwiddie? And the true thing is probably going to be somewhere in between. You mentioned that inconsistency. That's the concern is, okay, can he play like he did, I guess he came in February, that last month and a half, 2 months. Can he do that for a month at a time? Probably. But can he do it over the course of a season is a big question that we haven't seen since that 1 year in Brooklyn, when truthfully, they weren't I mean, they were competitive that year, but they weren't, competing for anything in the playoffs or a contender or anything like that. So can he do that on a competitive team in a West that's a lot more competitive than the East that he was in that year? I'm not sure. The talk a lot this year has been, or this offseason, I should say, has been about the Mavs replacing Jalen Brunson's production. I don't think that's a huge issue because you've got Spencer Dinwiddie. He's going to replace some of that production. The question is, who's going to replace Spencer Dinwiddie's production on that, the minutes that he's not going to get now. So,
Sure.
He's moved up in the depth chart in one spot. There's no one to move into his spot. So I think that's where, I think Spencer Dinwiddie can do a pretty good Jalen Brunson impersonation. I think he'll be fine in that sense. I was concerned about, Brunson was really big for the Mavericks in the mid range, which is a huge thing because they're going to try and get to the rim. They're going to try and shoot 3-pointers. But when things break down, you need a guy who can hit a mid range shot or two. Obviously, that's going to be Doncic most of the time, but Brunson was able to do that last year for the Mavs a lot.
He does the things I'm interested in seeing Dinwiddie do more of is drives and drawing fouls, which he did a really nice job with the Mavericks last year. In those 23 games, he averaged 4.7 free throws, which is really, really good. The thing that I'm concerned about is the 3-point shooting, where he has been an abhorrent 3-point shooter throughout his career. He's a 32% 3-point shooter. Last year at the Mavericks, he shot 40%. We obviously saw him hit huge shots in the playoffs after being ungodly bad for long stretches. And so does the shot come and go? And better yet, does whether the shot is hitting affect how the rest of his game translates? Because it's okay to miss shots so long as you're doing other things while you're out there on the floor. And at the moment, I'm just a little nervous about that, particularly with some of the lackluster preseason performances that we saw. But I mean, again, it's preseason.
Yeah. Him hitting, that it was just a 25 game sample. I think did he shoot like 41% or something for 3 during that? Yeah. I mean, it was good. Again, I can't see him shooting like that for a whole season, but I mean, what would be a respectable 3-point percentage for him for
give me 35, like 34, 35,
like average, like league average, I think. And that's enough. That's what the Mavericks need.
And it's silly because when you talk about these things, you talk about them over. So it's like on a per game basis, he shot 4.5 threes. So when you're talking about that with the totals here, so he made, and granted, guys, this is like some heavy math shit, so I apologize, but it's, he shot 104 threes with the Mavericks in the regular season and he hit 42 of them. So if he would have hit instead like 36, his percentage goes down. So it's like, we're not talking about that many more made threes over the course of the season is what I'm getting at. It's just a few more here and there, and he can't have these stretches where he's not able to hit anything. I'm sure that will happen, but it's a matter of how do the Mavericks sort of battle through that? Because I think that for as much as fans loved Spencer this season, I think there's going to be a lot of not like open eyes, but like he's going to be high key a frustrating guy from game to game.
Yeah, we had a really small sample of Spencer, and now we're going to get the full complement of everything. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe he has brought up the fact that last year was his first year back from the ACL surgery, and we all know usually those guys don't recover very well until the year after that. So
yes,
maybe the Mavericks are the beneficiaries of that second year recovery from the ACL injury. So.
Which is what I think one of the biggest things we can hope for. So from a guy who we're expecting a little bit or a lot of inconsistency to probably the single most consistent Maverick on the roster, and Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith he signed a contract extension with the Mavericks for 3 years, probably locking him up to being one of the most valuable players in the NBA dollar for dollar. He has been with the Mavericks for all 6 of his NBA seasons. And he's looking to be sort of a Mav for life. Dorian played outstanding last year. These last 3 years for the Mavericks, particularly as Luka has come into his own, has really the Dorian Finney-Smith has been part of the tide that has risen, and he just continues to play better and better. And the Mavericks are able to get more and more out of him. And last year was the year he started putting the ball on the floor a little bit more. I was just so impressed with Dorian Finney-Smith, and I really don't have a lot to add outside of the fact that I'm really looking forward to seeing him play basketball.
Yeah, I would have to admit being really wrong on Dorian Finney-Smith a couple times over the past couple years, because as late as January, I think December or January of last year, I was like, hey, maybe he's valuable. Let's trade him. The season seems like it's pretty meh. Like we're going to end up in the first round loss anyway. Go ahead and trade Dorian Finney-Smith and maybe get a first round pick for him. Well, obviously that's wrong. He's super valuable to the Mavericks. They can't replace what he does just with anybody. His shooting keeps going up. I mean, it went up slightly, like 1/100th of a point last year, but basically he still improved his 3-point shooting. And that's pretty crazy going from a guy, because I think first couple of years in the league, he was like 21 to 26% from three, and on a pretty good volume too. I mean,
his third year in the league, I'm looking at this now, because this was the year I lost my mind. He played 81 games in 18-19, so that's Luka's rookie season. He shot 3 threes a game and hit at 31%. Okay. So for total volume in that same season, 18-19, he shot 254 threes and hit just 80 of them.
Wow.
And then the next year he comes in, and if the game log is pretty important for 19-20. He started shooting like 40% in the new year, if I'm remembering this correctly. And he shot 38% for the season. And then these last 2 seasons, he shot 39%. I mean, just a remarkable level of consistency on increasing volume throughout the year. And he's been outstanding. Nothing, there's really no way around it.
Yeah, my only critique of him would be he needs to, when he gets an open 3-pointer, just needs to really start hitting those at a higher rate, because his 3-point shooting percentage is really basically his open and wide open 3-point shooting percentage.
He gets some of the most open looks in the league.
Yeah. So if and it would really help the Mavericks as far as their spacing going, if he would start hitting those open shots at like a 44 to 45% clip instead of what he's doing right now, which is like 41. That could, because what's going on is defenses are still leaving him open, despite the fact that he's pretty much known as a good shooter now. He's still getting left open. His like 61% of his shots, I think, last season were either open or wide open. Compare that, let's say, to a elite shooter like Seth Curry. His open or wide open shots were 40%. So if for some reason he could just start, even like, let's say, open up the season maybe on a hot streak, I think that would put the fear into defenses, and they would collapse on him a little bit harder when the ball is kicked out to him, and that would open up more space in the paint for Luka and the other guys who want to drive.
Sure. Well, Luka's, Dorian is just such a valuable player, and he's probably the most tradable asset on the roster past Luka, and they'd be nuts to move him at this point.
Yeah.
Can't
get any return on value for him.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
So now we come to, earlier I mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie as the 1B X Factor. So the 1A X Factor for me is Christian Wood. Matthew Phillips wrote the player preview for him and really takes a bullet on what to expect out of Christian Wood, who has played kind of his entire career in weird situations. Things just haven't come out correct in the wash for him. He's on a contract year. And the honest to goodness answer is, for if he wants to remain in the NBA, he needs to accept the role that the Mavericks have placed upon him, play basketball to the best of his abilities, and really just play hard. And I think everything works itself out. Luka Doncic will help make Christian Wood an unreasonable amount of money, because Christian Wood is a very talented basketball player that doesn't necessarily seem to be able to get out of his own way in a career sense. Very inconsistent in terms of effort and things like that, but just overflows with talent. And if the Mavericks are going to make a run in some way in the Western Conference, I think it will be if Christian Wood sort of takes the Antoine Jameson role from way back in the day when he was a Mavericks bench player, exploits it, and really becomes like a 6th man of the year candidate and makes a case for starting. I think really highly of his ability to play basketball. It's just, is he going to put the first thing first? Because if he's so concerned about a contract, which by all whisperings and accounts he really is, then it's going to be a problem for him this year. If he can just let his basketball do the talking, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, he can. All he needs to do is score on offense. The defense will come later. I know the defense is probably going to hold him back as far as minutes goes, but I just don't think it's possible for him to really pick up to the defensive level that Kid's going to want until maybe like January or February of this year. So what he can do to basically, force Kid to keep him on the court is just eat on the offensive end. He's going to get a ton of open 3-pointers. He's going to get a ton of open like rolls to the lane. If he can do that, then it's going to be impossible for Kid to keep him off the floor. They can figure out the defensive stuff. I know Kid's going to like really hammer on the defense, and I think he will earlier too. He seems to really focus on that. Focus on the defense. Well, I don't know how I'm trying to say this. He wants to focus on the defense early in the season, and then eventually just gives way to the offense as the season goes along.
The defense is harder to connect because it requires reps, it requires tinkering, and it requires process functioning in a way that the offense, because Luka is so good at offense,
right?
It's less of a It's just less of an issue compared to the two. Like they'll figure out their offense. They did last year.
Yeah, Wood's going to get so many open shots that just did not come the last year in Houston, and other places he played. I think he got a few games with James Harden, so he's going to get shots that he's never gotten before, and they're just going to be wide open 3-pointers. They're going to be just walks it to the rim, easy lobs, so he's going to put up numbers on offense, and that's where like he needs to focus on. It's just like, hey, like you said, be everywhere he needs to be, really develop that chemistry with Luka, because again, I just don't see him, a guy who struggled on defense everywhere in the past, just coming in and immediately being a great defensive player on a team, a new defensive scheme. So,
well, and the bench role that he's going to be starting the season with, 6-man type guy, gives him an opportunity to play against lesser talented, the 6th, 7th, 8th men on other teams.
Yeah.
And he can take advantage of that if he focuses. And that could theoretically lead to a change in role. Like these things tend to work themselves out if you just do the things within your control, which is, starts and ends with playing hard. So I'm low key at the moment. I feel bullish on his outcome, but it is up to him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't want that role or he lets other things get in the way, then the Mavericks are not going to deal with that. And then he won't be a Maverick.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward there.
And they don't have a ton invested in him. I think that's what a lot of people, expect him to just walk into this like all-star role. There's a reason he was available for a late first-round pick and just salary exchange, So it's up to him to go out there and grab, do the things that he's supposed to do. And then because the big thing is, I think the highest ceiling for the Mavericks is Christian Wood playing the 5 in the playoffs. I think at least for, a good chunk of the minutes, I think that's their high ceiling, but that's going to, depend on him being able to handle those defensive minutes at the 5. And early on, they're just not going to trust him to do that, but it's up to him to prove that he can do that. And if he is their starting 5 for, a playoff series or two, then yeah, he's going to get that contract he wants.
Well, there's not much more to be said there about Wood, though. I really am looking forward to see him play basketball. The glimpses we've gotten in preseason were a lot of fun. So that leaves us with the most obvious candidate that we haven't discussed, in Luka Doncic. I wrote the player preview for him. I think there's an opportunity, or if you don't consider it an opportunity, there's a likelihood that Luka Doncic plays one of the highest usage seasons of NBA history. Where he might be an MVP candidate just based on the fact of how much he has the ball and the numbers he puts up. My friend Matt Moore said on a podcast we did last week that he has bets down for Luka to lead the the NBA in scoring and assists. He just thinks that they're going to have to run everything through him because of the aforementioned sort of ball handling challenges. Luka comes into camp in shape for the first time since the 2019-20 season. There's no reason outside of maybe his own focus that the Mavericks shouldn't get off to a great start. I'm really ready to see Luka Doncic play basketball again. He does so many weird and fun things and is so impossible to guard and impossible to really describe when you're covering him. I know that there are people out there that really don't like how he plays. And my opinion is those people haven't actually watched him play. It's more of a preconceived notion. I get that he complains too much, but past that, watching Luka play basketball is really, really fun, and why I do this.
Yeah, the passes that he's able to make, it's insane. It's, we talked about it on Friday that so we think, there's this trend where Luka makes an amazing pass out to the 3-point line and the guy who catches the pass can't knock down the shot. And we were talking on Friday that, hey, maybe it's just because they don't expect this pass coming, because sometimes it comes out of nowhere and maybe they're just not ready for it. And that split second of like hesitation throws them off, because sometimes, we've all been watching basketball for a long time and he just hits angles that I've never seen before. It's crazy. So I can absolutely see, they're going to have to run everything through him. My only concern with him winning an MVP would be their, standings. Jokic won it with the 6th seed last year, and there was a lot of discussion about that. I wonder if there would be hesitation to hand it to a guy who's like 4th, 5th, 6th seed again. But it just depends on the numbers of the guys ahead of him. But yeah, there's certainly a good reason to think that he's could take home that MVP and lead. I don't know if he'll ever lead the NBA in scoring. I just don't. If he wanted to, he could.
The argument is just that they're going to have to increase usage to where he'll be like 32 to 33 points a game up. Because last year after the not All-Star break, the final 44 games of the season, he averaged 29.7 points a game. Like, it was something absurd. So
that's true.
You get him up, and it's like, what was NBA scoring leaders 2022? What was it last year?
If he's 29, he's probably close.
Yes. So it's like the 21-22 season for last year for points per game. Joel Embiid was at 30.6 and he was the leader. So this is because you're old like me, where you remember the Kobe Bryant seasons where he was pouring in 35 a game. So it's like, man, how's he going to do? Because I agree. Like, I don't know if Luka ever gets there. But if Luka can get to the free throw line, 8.5 times a game instead of 7, that 1.5 points and assuming he can finally actually get his free throws up to about 80%, there's a real chance. There's a real chance for Luka to do all this. Past that, just if he can focus on defense and shut his mouth around the refs a little more, those are about the only two things that I could really think.
Cool. I would say the big thing is maybe running more. We've talked about this for like 2 or 3 years now with Luka. They don't want to run. We thought maybe it was a Carlisle thing, and they actually got slower with Jason Kidd. It's a weird thing if you watched him in the Eurobasket. He would grab a rebound and take off, or get the ball down the court, at least pass it down the court, for an outlet pass. And they just seem to have no interest in doing that. And I just think that would be a really they have this tendency sometimes, and especially in close games against quality teams, to have to go into the half court and grind out possessions down to like the last 2 or 3 seconds on the shot clock. And it would be super nice for, the Mavericks just score a few easy points off of Luka grabbing the rebound and then kicking the ball down the court. Again, for whatever reason, they just have not seem interested in doing that at all. I would like to see that more.
Well, I think a lot of that, and I have a follower, Harold, who messages me about his Mavs thoughts, as a lot of you do out there. But he had a really interesting line of thinking the other night, and I tend to agree with it, that almost all that is based off of Luka. I think we used to blame Rick, but I don't think Luka wants to run. I would like for Luka to kick it ahead more, which is one thing that's not necessarily running, but I don't think we're ever going to get like Luka Doncic really up in terms of like pushing the pace. It's not his DNA, which is weird because he plays for one of the best fast break point guards of all time.
And he does it in international play a little bit. So I don't know.
He does a lot of kick ahead stuff though. And see, that's what I want to see more of, which is like, if you get streaking guys, you get, Spencer Dinwiddie up on, running on the break, do the kick ahead pass. Like, so let's see what happens. So Well, this has been great. It's just under a half hour. Talked about 5 guys. I can't really think of anything else I want to hit on. We're just, as we're recording, we got 70 something hours until basketball is being played again. I'm looking forward to that. Do you have any parting shots for us?
Just looking forward to the season. Yeah, that's all I got. Is go Bills. I'm sorry. About your Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you can't see it, but I'm wearing the Bills shirt.
That was a really good game.
Every time they play, it's a fun game. So
and it's weird. Like, this is a basketball related thought, but like when I watch cornerbacks like try to contain wide receivers, particularly on like route running, it reminds me of point of attack defense for whoever is guarding in basketball, where you're basically trying to stay within range of the ball handler. Yeah. And there's just a couple of times in that football game where it just did not happen for Chiefs defense stuff, where it's a little bit of a role reversal, where last year's team, the Chiefs just run past the Bills. Instead, this year, the Bills just run past the Chiefs. So, well, there's some football talk to end your podcast with, guys. I know that's what you were really waiting on. This has been Kirk Henderson and Ben Zadell. I'll be back. I don't know. I'll be back at some point with something. I'm really bad about scheduling, but I always come up with content. This has been Kirk and Ben at Mavs Moneyball. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your week.